So, good evening, and welcome to my talk titled Svelte at Geizhals, in which I will, surprisingly, talk about how we use Svelte at Geizhals. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Martin Grubinger. I'm a long-time visitor of Svelte Vienna meetup. Thank you for organizing to all of you, and thank you for having me today. So this is my first time here, long-time visitor, first-time speaker, so be kind, you know. I actually started using Svelte around 2019, I guess, when Svelte 3 came out. At my job at that time, I created highly interactive web applications with mostly PHP. Handlebars and jQuery, and later a bit of React. With that background, I discovered Svelte, and Svelte 3 felt, just right, just the right amount of magic. I think most of you can somehow relate to that. In 2020, I joined Geizhals, so 5 years ago, Geizhals Preisvergleich, as part of the front-end team. Some of my colleagues sit in the first row. Svelte, of course, was not used at Geizhals at that time, but things can change. And I'd like to share a bit of the reasoning behind the move to Svelte and what we've built so far. So you can find me on my personal website, grubinger.com with 3 O, or on Mastodon, preferably. I even have a Blue Sky account because I feel like Svelte community is more active on Blue Sky than Mastodon, which is a pity. Or on GitHub. So I assume most of you know Geizhals here in this room, but just to make sure, I'd like to give a brief introduction first. Then we'll look at the most important pieces of the tech stack we use at Geizhals and which tools we have been using before the switch to Svelte. And I'd like to show you a couple of apps that we've built so far and explain the architecture and outline some of the drawbacks and limitations we've encountered so far. So why Svelte and Svelte in action, drawbacks and limitations. Let's start by talking about Geizhals first. Geizhals is a price and product comparison website. When you're looking to buy something online, it helps you to make an informed decision and find the best price. You can also manage wish lists of your favorite products or get pinged once a product drops below a certain price via email or push notification or whatever. You can view detailed specs about a certain product, see how the price has evolved over time, view ratings, external tests, even compare our partner company Tarifati. Geizhals also lets you compare 2 or more products to help you find the best products for your need. So you can compare all the specs of different products and lots of more functionality. So Geizhals is the #1 price comparison website in Austria, but we're also very successful in Germany, but just not #1. I won't mention any names. We have more than 4 million monthly unique users with over 3.5 million manually edited products. I think that's one of the key features that we have at Geizhals. Our products are not just straight from some website. There are actually people sitting there in the office close to the Paterstern managing those products, making sure everything's correct. We have, at the moment, roughly 280 million up-to-date prices for all of these products. You can see that number on the start page of Geizhals as well. Geizhals has been in business for 25 years, which is a very long time for a website. And actually, tomorrow something will go live that I will show you today. I will have to move this somewhere where you can see it. So, okay, so we changed the logo. You've seen it first here. Okay, let's continue with the presentation, I guess. Okay. So the tech stack for the Geizhals Vergleich website, I'd like to mention that this is for the public website only. We do use different set of tools for internal tools that we also build. The backend is written in Perl with the Postgres databases. We use a templating system called Xlate. No offense if nobody ever heard of Xlate. It's pretty niche, but you know, you can maybe compare it with something like Blade in PHP or something. Most pages are completely server rendered by the Perl application and Xlate templating, but we render widgets, some call it islands these days, on the client. On the front end, we use the less CSS preprocessor. Historical reasons, but you know, it still works. And plain old JavaScript. So we have some of these widgets or apps on the website that we enhance the server rendered markup just using, you know, JavaScript. You can still do that. The front end side of things is built with Vite since 3 weeks, maybe. It was Webpack before, and I think we worked on it for 2 years or something to migrate everything to Vite, and now that's live, and the world is much better now. So let's talk about Svelte at Geizhals. Oh no, actually, back up a little bit and show you more about the recent history before we moved to Svelte. So if you're curious and you pay attention to the network tab while visiting our website, you might spot this gem. I don't know if you can read it in the back. It says something, React, something. And under certain circumstances, you can even spot this one, which starts with Redux, Saga, effects. And if that does not make you shudder, I don't know what will. Disclaimer, we use React and Redux a lot in turn tools, so that's fine. It's okay. But we can do better. Before switching to Svelte, we use Preact for interaction-heavy widgets on the website. And the TLDR is it has better performance than React. It's much smaller when you ship it to clients. It has no virtual DOM, no virtual events and stuff like this, so it's a lot faster. Another plus is it has the same API as React, so it makes it easy to migrate. But on the negative side, it has the same API as React. And also the same limitations regarding global state, styling, animations, you name it. Things that we love when this Svelte works. Preact actually is still in use for some parts of the website, for the main navigation on desktop, for example, and the comparison page on desktop as well. We're just not there yet. So Preact is not the worst choice in the world. So why did we move on from Preact? We had a problem. We needed to overhaul a certain part of the website, and the aim was to create a highly interactive page. But it was also crucial that we render the markup on the server for better search engine optimization, being usable without JavaScript at all. Yeah, make sure it works without JavaScript. So how do we solve that? We had one part of the site that already had solved the same problem, and the way that previous developers went about it, they built a version of this page first in Perl and Xlate, and then they did the same thing again in Preact. So we shipped the markup from the server that's generated by Xlate, and then you have to maintain and build the same thing again in a completely different language. And the site we were going to build was that complex that we thought that's no way maintainable or economically efficient. Oh, wow. I missed that. So we started. So we started prototyping with server rendering React code, but it pretty soon became clear that we need a meta framework anyways to handle all the data loading and that kind of stuff. And with my previous experience in Svelte and SvelteKit, we decided to try to build that prototype using SvelteKit. Svelte enters the stage. Since that prototyping phase was quite successful, we then made a conscious decision to, first of all, build out this new part of the website using SvelteKit. And second, eventually replace all the Preact apps that we did so far and only do new projects with Svelte going forward. As I mentioned earlier, we're not quite there yet, but we're slowly ripping out the Preact stuff and replacing them with Svelte. So why Svelte? For Geizhals, performance is crucial, and Svelte matches that mindset perfectly. We used other third-party libraries for charting and that kind of stuff, and they're really easy to integrate in Svelte. Another point is that it's much easier to understand for non-front-end developers than reading a JSX or React app. In my opinion, it has superior templating to JSX. Actions can actually be used for plain JavaScript as well. So I mentioned earlier, we have some of the apps that's just plain JavaScript, so we can reuse those actions in JavaScript, which is awesome. In general, Svelte does not get in the way. No more juggling with different state management libraries, for example. And scoped CSS, accessibility warnings, animations, it's all baked in. It just makes so much more sense. So, Svelte in action at Geizhals, or should I say, in attachment. I'm going to show you a couple of parts of the website that use Svelte already, like the autocomplete start page, a couple of widgets there, the auth, wish lists, price alerts, ratings, manufacturer filter. It's more and more. So I'm gonna switch over to the browser for a second. So we're on the start page of the Geizhals website. Where's my mouse? Oh. No, focus. Yes. So for example, this part up here, autocomplete box, if I look for iPhone, all of that is a Svelte component, or Svelte app, rather say. What are we looking at next? Also on the start page, we have things like this one here, like your browsing history. That's the client's rendered Svelte app as well. We have this part, which is a bit of a mix. On the start page, we show deals. Those are products that have the price dropped significantly recently. And initially, on server templating, we render out this part, but then replace it on the client with a Svelte app that lets you select your favorite categories that you might want to watch on the start page. You can switch here and select a category here. It's probably really small in the back. This, if I'm into Kopfhörer, I get the deals from this Kopfhörer category on the start page. We'll talk about Ratgeber later on. What else? If you want to log in, which I am already, let's do that one. Okay. So if you log in, the whole authentication modal with registering and resetting password and all that kind of stuff, that's all as Svelte as well. If you add a certain product to a wish list, for example, here, add to wish list. It will load this dialog modal, and you can you can add this product to your wish list, and then move on to that wish list. And all of that is also client rendered Svelte these days. Same thing goes for price, a feature that we call price alarm. So if you're watching a certain product and want to get a notification once the price drops below a certain threshold, you can just enter a price limit, hit save, and it will send you an email once that price is reached. And you can also review your price alarm on this page. That's also client rendered Svelte. Let's see. I'm going to show you one more thing, maybe. Spend too much time on that. If you go to Bewertungen, so ratings, on a certain product page, you will get this ratings summary here, and the list of all the ratings. That's also Svelte. We have a couple of smaller dialog modals and filters and that kind of stuff on the website. I'm not going to go too much into detail here. Okay, and that. Okay, so we are using Svelte 5, but mostly Svelte 4 syntax. We have not migrated everything, with a few exceptions. As I said, it's mostly client rendered with a few exceptions that I'll go to later on. We rely on custom stores a lot for data fetching. I'm going to show one piece of code on the next slide. And we maintain a set of reusable components that we use throughout the site. Absolutely makes sense, like a select, icon, dialog, that kind of stuff. Those are all written by us, so we don't use an external library for that. So we use custom stores a lot for co-locating data storage and fetching, data fetching, because most of our apps on the website or widgets, Svelte widgets, somehow communicate with an API in some way. And by co-locating the data storage and data fetching, it's very easy for us to reason about how the data flows through the app. So usually what we do is we create a writable. These days that would be a state room. And then we return all the writable methods, but also we add our own methods. So it's really easy to interact with that in the component that actually uses the store. So, sound effects here. New category page. I mentioned earlier the project that we prototyped, SvelteKit first, was actually to rebuild what we call category page, which is where you can set all the filters in a certain category to find the products that match those filters. It was meant to incrementally be introduced for more and more categories, because we also had to redo the backend side of the things. So for individual categories, we wanted to migrate to a new UI. This is what it looks like. Some of you maybe know this view. That's what we call category page. And the new version looks like this, but it has different phases. So you can switch the views between a more simplistic layout, because one of the aims was to attract new users and not scare them away with something like this. But also, at the same time, we have to cater for the pro users that have been using Geizhals for 20 years or even more. So you can switch to different layout mode here. So components move around the layout quite a lot. So it makes sense to render that on the client. So as I said, it aims to make the UI easier for new users, but at the same time, equally as powerful for what we call pro users. It aims to provide more interactive UI than what we had before, without page reloads. And also at the same time, we developed new data endpoints that would allow for much more granular control about which data we want to load. So with that in mind, we developed a server-side rendered SvelteKit app that's actually embedded into the main markup at request time. So what happens is request comes in, the Perl code does all its templating, renders out the header, the frame around the actual category page, and then it makes kind of like a sub request to the SvelteKit node server, gets back the markup, injects that into the already existing markup, and then continues just rendering Xlate templates. So it's kind of a Frankenstein architecture. It uses around 80 components for this sub page. And as I said earlier, it was incrementally introduced, and it's still not yet active for every category because the filters are not ready yet. And also we're doing ongoing iterative improvements on the UI. So if you have an idea how to improve it, let me know. Fun fact, the development actually started way before SvelteKit 1.0, but post-Zapper world, luckily. And also, the category page launched, even though it was the reason we switched to Svelte, it launched long after we already had other Svelte client-side rendered apps on the Geizhals website. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. There we go. For example, so this is it's up here. So this is what we call the simple layout or einfache Filter, and the main switch up here is you switch to erweiterte Filter, which we also call Pro mode, where you get more filters. You get more of the aesthetics and the old category page. So like our regular Pro users will feel more at home. You have some presets over here that you can choose and that are managed also by people in the editorial team. Price range slider, like this. In categories where you have loads of filters, it's really handy to just search for any filter value or one of these keys like camel back, and you just get these filters back that apply to that filter. And you can customize that view quite a bit, you know, show more collapse things, that kind of stuff. One feature that was previously very underrepresented on the old UI, in my opinion, is that you can actually add certain attributes to the table of products down here. So if you're really interested in the weight of a Trinkflasche in this case, you can click this little button here, and it will add another column down here, and makes it easy to sort for Gewicht. 2 grams sounds optimistic, I guess. So if you find something like this, there's I'm going to show you. There's feedback sent in here. I'm not going to do that now, but I should. Yeah, that's about it. Different kind of filters, as I said earlier, like this range slider and colors that are enhanced depending on the type of filter. And let's see if that works. Great, it has yellow in it somewhere. Okay, so this is the Frankenstein architecture I talked about earlier. So the whole header, including breadcrumbs, is server rendered in Xlate and Perl. And from here on, it's actually the SvelteKit app. And all the way at the bottom, we continue with the server-side markup again. Easy, right? drawbacks of embedding a SvelteKit app in a monolith. So the SvelteKit server is not accessible from the public. We wanted to shield that off as best as possible. So it's only accessible from the Perl backends. So we could not really use the SvelteKit router. Also, it lives under a different route that we can handle in SvelteKit. So we had to roll our own client-side router. Then again, we have this client-side routing, but we also wanted to make sure that any filters you select and the view changes and all that is represented in the get parameters as part of the state. So if you hit refresh or bookmark that site, you'll land on the same page. So so handling those query parameters is a bit cumbersome because you have to handle them once on the backend side in Perl, then you have to send them on to the SvelteKit page.server.js, manage them there, validate them, and then pass it on to the actual client components. And the dev server also needed a bit of tinkering using the hooks server.js to manipulate paths to make it to serve it in the development environment. Still have a little bit of time, right? Just one sip. Then there's a different category of Svelte apps again. Another part of the website, it's called Ratgeber. You can think of it like guides. That's also rendered on the same SvelteKit node application, but works a little bit differently. It looks like this. Oh, shit, can I switch here? Sorry about that. Oh, we can actually go here, Ratgeber. So we have a dedicated editorial team that writes these guides. So if you're looking to buy an external hard drive or an SSD, you can consult this guide. So it looks like a regular website that maybe you would manage on WordPress or something. This has different components like this box here, images. We have like pro and contra lists, not here. Yeah. And a FAQ section here, table of contents, that kind of stuff. And how we built that is, again, a little bit different. So it's long-form content about categories or individual products, edited by, as I mentioned, our in-house editorial team. No AI, real humans. It is edited in a self-hosted Strapi CMS. It's a node-based CMS. And then it's statically pre-rendered on SvelteKit routes. So Markdown from the Strapi CMS goes in, spits out HTML. We store it in Redis and request it on request time, or read it on request time. And the rendering, the statically pre-rendered rendering part is triggered by Strapi publish hooks. So let me show you how that works. In the Strapi CMS, an editor hits the publish button once they're done with editing. Strapi calls a webhook that talks to a webhook service, also a Perl service. That webhook goes to the SvelteKit application. We're not there yet. The SvelteKit service fetches data from the Strapi API, renders out the markdown, and returns HTML, which we then store in Redis. So the bridge between what's accessible from the public is Redis actually. So the Perl application that runs on Apache actually only talks to Redis. It does not talk to Strapi CMS. It does not talk to the node server. So all that is shielded away. It's super efficient lookup. So the Pro is a very fast delivery. So Redis lookup just by the category and the language that the user is requesting it in. And the Strapi CMS and SvelteKit node server are not exposed to the public at all. Drawback, as with all the statically pre-generated sites, when any CSS or the components change, we have to re-render the whole suite of Ratgebers to make sure that they are actually showing the correct markup. I've shown you that. This will be a quick one, and also the last one. We are at the moment developing a new self-service app for our merchants, which are our clients. They pay us, so that's how we can work on the website. And I'm allowed to give you a little sneak peek, but unfortunately only screenshots. There's really not too much to say about it. It's a pretty standard SvelteKit application running on a node server, actually multiple node servers. It consumes 2 different APIs, which is not true. It actually consumes 3 different APIs because I forgot the OAuth API. It's also served by the same Strapit CMS. So we reuse that CMS that I talked about earlier with the Ratgeber to populate some parts of the merchant service app. The merchants can edit all their company data, where they're located, their opening hours, that kind of stuff, view a lot of statistics, view their ratings on the website, respond to the ratings, view the, how many clicks they made through our website, get FAQ news and all that kind of stuff. Some of you have to be very brave now because we're using Bootstrap for the CSS. No regrets. It's so simple. We had a different component framework first. It was not a lot of fun. It was not complete. It was buggy as hell. Then we decided to rip it all out, just use Bootstrap. It's fine. For that application, we're leaning heavily into state via forms and get parameters, which is really nice because it's too fast. Which is nice because it makes it pretty easy to build a system where you can save certain filters and views to your dashboard, kind of, because it's all just get parameters. And here's a little sneak peek what that looks like. This is the dashboard. We have news, an empty chart because I'm missing data here. You can edit or review the status of your shop, FAQ, review the sources of your price lists that we actually use to display the correct prices on the website, and loads of other views. One of them is ratings, so you get a nice view of your recent ratings on our website, and you can also go into detail and view each individual rating and answer them. A quick conclusion. I can't really speak for my colleagues. You can talk to them later. Maybe they have different opinions, but here's my conclusion. Overall, I think we're pretty happy with how that migration to Svelte turned out in terms of performance, which is most important, ergonomics for us and also for the user, and the pace of development of the Svelte library itself. Svelte 5, mixed feelings. It is a bit of a chore to update existing apps, even if the auto migration works pretty well in most cases. But as I showed you earlier, we have a few not standard situations, I would say. Early returns in an effect drives me nuts. We used to do that in stores. We early exit maybe if a condition does not apply. With an effect, you can't do that, and I have not found a very nice solution to solve that. But still, rules make the code more explicit. I talked about magic earlier, which is nice, and I think I'm quoting Rich here that only a certain amount of magic is good. Also, I think we are reaching much faster iterations with Svelte than we did before, and a lot less head scratching and why is this not re-rendering, why is this rendering so often, and all kinds of performance good foot guns. The lack of dev tools is a bit of a but I found it only really relevant in larger apps. Most of the time you can get away with debug and inspect and that kind of stuff. Co-locating CSS is mostly a blessing, but it can make reuse some of the less mix-ins that we already have for the rest of the site a little bit difficult because of scoping issues, and then maybe it's too global, so you have to be careful. That's about it. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Before I ask some real questions, did anyone on the backend team today hear from Geizhals?
No.
Awesome. Why not?
Historical reasons.
Yeah, but you migrated from React to Svelte, and
right.
Why not get rid of the React shit?
So I can only speak for the front-end team. This is what I'm in charge of. So we try to move a bit faster. Our backend devs, they love Perl. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from yeah, it is. Perl was the language Geizhals was originally created in 25 years ago, or even more, because it was not a company at that time. And they just never felt a real need to replace it. It's fast.
To compare to what?
To
assembler, maybe. Or I don't know.
Not sure. I don't know. But one difficulty that we're facing is that it's getting harder each year to hire Perl devs. There's not too many young Perl devs, newcomers. So at some point, maybe Perl devs will earn wages like COBOL devs or something. Yeah. Yeah.
You talked about why Svelte, and one reason was that it's easier for non-front-end developers to understand it. Mm-hmm. I work in a company, we only use .NET, .NET for backend and frontend. And we, for example, have this problem that a lot of the people are like more backend focused and don't want to touch the front end as much as or as less as possible. Mm-hmm. We have the problem to like communicate to them. There are good frameworks which are easy to use. Mm-hmm. Does this thing like only fit if you're a Perl developer that it's easier to go with Svelte, or is it like for other programming languages, object-oriented programming languages as well?
Very good question. I think since Svelte is like a superset of HTML, if you know HTML, which you should if you're a backend developer, it's easier to reason about Svelte components than if we compare it to a JSX or React application, where it's JavaScript first. If you're not living in that world, I think sometimes it's difficult to see what is JavaScript, what is React, why, what is all that? And if you look at a simple Svelte component, that's just markup, right? And you have some placeholder variables. So yeah, I think it's much easier to reason about if you know HTML.
Okay.
Okay. There was another question, I think. Two more.
So you have multiple different Svelte apps running at the same time, and how do you test those, or is it like vibes only and it works?
Both things can be true. No, we have a test suite, end-to-end test suite for that runs on Cypress, which we're not particularly happy with. So we are thinking about maybe switching to Playwright because it lets us write tests a lot faster. But we're not there yet. But We do have end-to-end tests that cover most of, I don't know, maybe not most, because there's so many features and different layouts and viewports sizes. But we try to cover the most important things and cache them. So that's front-end testing or end-to-end testing. There's per tests as well, of course, but no real unit tests for our Svelte components. If that's what you're asking. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You wanted to ask a question?
Yes,
So since you mentioned that for the homepage, for example, that it renders the Svelte application, then after the page renders, and then call the API after that. I wonder if you how to handle this calling API. Like, do you have like do you generate Swagger or open API, or do you have some kind of end-to-end type safety since you mentioned also that you like generate it, or do you use REST API or GraphQL, or how is this?
Good question. We're talking to REST APIs, so different APIs for different use cases. And the Swagger documentation, we have Swagger documentation, but in some parts they're not completely accurate because we have so many overloads. Sometimes on one endpoint, it can return different things depending on the parameters, and that gets pretty tricky to correctly define in Swagger. But for the last application I showed you, the merchant service application, we're heavily using audit-generated types based on the Swagger Open API specification. So I run that. It just generates those types, and I just set them in the JS doc in my data fetching, and that propagates all the way through. So in the SvelteKit app, it's pretty easy. Even if you're not using TypeScript per se, you can still generate TypeScript, and I even sometimes add my own TypeScript types if I'm missing something, but I consume them in JS doc, not TypeScript. On the public website, it's a little bit more difficult, as I said, because the Swagger or the Open API specification is not that accurate, and then it does not help that much. Yeah, does that answer the question?
You mentioned that, of course, it's a big monolith. Do you have a setup monolith, or like is this like basically? I wonder how you deal, or if there are like breaking changes in your API. Like if you then deploy your backend first and then quickly frontend, or do they get coupled together?
They are coupled together as one deployment, and only when the deployment finishes, we switch to the new version. So by that time, we know that the Apache web servers are restarted already, in theory, at least. So we just recently, as I mentioned, we did the migration to Vite, and it was not only the migration to Vite, but we completely ripped out a whole build pipeline and how those assets are served and how we load the correct chunks with the hashes. We use the import map as a very central piece with that change. So yeah, once it's built and the web servers are restarted, we then flip a switch that basically only then the new assets are loaded. So we know that we're ready. Yeah.
I have time for one more question.
There was one more?
A short one, if it's a short one. So you mentioned that your site is doing some things for historical reasons, and it's also a bit of what you call Frankenstein. If you had to, like, set it up from the ground up, like, imagine the new data doesn't exist, you're building it from day one. How would you do it? You can just tell me how you don't need to elaborate. I'm just going to ask you.
Okay.
This sounds like a short question.
I'm thinking of. Yeah. So we had a similar situation when we decided to do the merchant service application that I showed last from scratch, which is a rare situation, and we went SvelteKit. Yeah. But we talked to a per API, so that's still there. You could do it just in SvelteKit and use the server routes a lot, and it will be fine, I guess. Yeah.
You sound like you have this issue right now and you're thinking how to do it, but you can talk about it.
I'm really interested about his CMS, but I thought, why not ask about the whole thing?
So if anyone has more questions, Martin is going to be happy to.
Yeah, I'll be around. Yeah. Thank you.